Hi BookTube! Welcome back to my channel. It's time for kind of another wrap up. I say wrap up, spoilers, I DNF'd every single book in my TBR, just sort of pre-lockdown. So that means that every single book in this wrap up was DNF'd, but I figured I would just really quickly kind of like go through and just give you guys an idea of like what I was trying to read, like how much I liked it to begin with, and like my reasons for DNFing, because some of them I did want to finish, but pandemic got the better of me, and then others were just not so great, so I thought I would at least try and give like sort of a wrap up, sort of like my thoughts and feelings on some of these books, at least the ones that I like did try to get to. And yeah, so that's what this video is gonna be. It's probably gonna be a mess, because it's been, I must have been trying to read them in March and it's now November. And obviously I didn't finish any of them, so this will be interesting. I've also moved my entire room. It looks like the same setup. It's not. I'm not in the same space that I previously was, so I don't have any of the books to hand. They've all been shelved, filed, put away, boxed, that sort of thing. So you will have to deal with some images on the screen somewhere. So the first self-published book that I tried to read in March was The Dark Sea Beyond by Raisobo. So I remember initially picking this up because the thing that drew me to it was, aside from the fact that the cover is fantastic and this was advertised to me on Instagram, was that I had never read a book, at least I don't think, with a gnome as the main protagonist. It's very like D&D, it's very kind of like fun and quirky and a bit different. I think this might be the first in a series. I'm not sure if it's a standalone. The general plot, as I understood it going in, was that a young gnome is forced to sort of flee his home city and ends up on this like long overseas voyage. Much more than that I don't remember, and I had gotten to the ship sea voyage portion of the story before I unfortunately had to DNF it. So the reasons that I found that this story just didn't really gel with me with it was very like lighthearted and comedic, and I sometimes like that. Kings of the Wild does it fantastically. It was just the sort of brand of humour and the same kind of jokes used over and over again that just didn't really, like, they weren't hitting me, and every time I was just like, it's another dick joke, isn't it? I get that the main character of this book is a bit of a layabout, a bit of a womanizer, you know, he likes to just sort of like have fun and sleep around, and the character themselves does seem fairly likeable. I feel like if they were the side character or like a recurring sort of background character in anything else, you would probably like really enjoy their time on the page. They would be quite funny, but having them as the main character and having it be like just nothing but dick jokes and pulling like a giant sausage out of your pants, and then like just I was getting a little bit tired of it. It's not that often, but it is sort of like the characters' go-to, and they do have like a fair bit of like snarky, witty dialogue, but it all tends to sort of like fall kind of along the same like sort of vibe. There's like funny tavern songs and singing and bards and that sort of thing, but again, it's all kind of like the same sort of thing, and the story really just wasn't capturing my attention. It wasn't that there were plot holes or anything, it just didn't feel always like characters were acting the most naturally. It almost felt like the characters themselves were playing characters and just like playing up to this very specific like two-dimensional little niche that they had to fit to sort of fit their like character archetype of like the jokester bard kind of thing, and I don't know, it just wasn't really holding my attention. I was finding that I wasn't really wanting to read it very much. I was drifting off a little bit while reading it. So at the time I said to myself that I would pick up something else, try something else, and then I would try and get back to this. So I'm not going to get rid of this book. I will maybe try and finish this at some point because I think it had potential. Again, I do kind of like the whole sea voyage setup thing, but I just wasn't really enjoying it at the time. I'm not sure if that's the time that I was reading it at, or maybe this just isn't the book for me. I am willing to give it another chance, but yeah, sadly I DNF'd it. I want to say like maybe around or just less than about 100 pages in. Ish. I think the next book I picked up after that was Bloodstained Tea by Amy Tasakada. This book is set in Japan. I think it's set in Kyoto. It could be Tokyo, but I think it's set in Kyoto. And I believe the main character is an ex-Yakuza, so like an ex-gang member, who now runs a tea shop. On one evening they encounter an injured, like unconscious, semi-conscious man, and I think that sort of like brings them back into like this entanglement with their Yakuza past. So I only read the first chapter of this, and the story, the setup sounds exactly like the kind of thing that I would love to read. If this were a manga, I probably would have binged it in like a single sitting. My only issue with this was I just didn't really enjoy the writing style, and that wouldn't normally faze me as much, but going from DNFing one book and then the very next book I picked up, I wasn't really enjoying just the words on the page themselves. It just wasn't really like my kind of thing. So I just couldn't really bring myself to push through it and keep reading on. I think if this had been the only book, like if I'd read something fantastic and then moved on to this, then I think maybe I would have been able to push through, but at this point I was like, nope, I'm just gonna have to move on. I just need to try and find something else that will keep my attention and that I will enjoy. So again, it's another one that I'm definitely going to go back and try and give this another shot at some point, because I think that the major reason for me not reading this was just that I needed something really good to help break through the fact that the books this month had been failing me, and this just wasn't the one to do it. So I read the first chapter and then I was like, it was grating on me a little bit, and I was like, I'm gonna have to put this aside for later. So maybe someday in the future I'll pick it back up, but yeah, sadly, another DNF. And then the third book on this list, I tried so hard to read this, it's so short. I picked up The Rest is Silence by Chi Rempel. So this is, I can't remember, I think it's a Hamlet? I think it's a Shakespeare retelling. I think it's Hamlet, yeah. The quotes from, yes. It's basically Hamlet but with like a gay romance. I was thinking like, yeah, you know, a gay take on Shakespeare, what could go wrong? And again, there was nothing particularly bad about this. It was just, I think it was just too simple, too standard. I was reading it and the two main male characters clearly like one another, but it's this whole sort of like, will they ever find out that the other one likes them sort of thing. And I can't remember anyone's name, but the female friend in this, who I think might be like betrothed to the prince in this, again, she was like a really well-written best friend. She seemed really cool and really fun. I think like the setup and like the payoff in this book just wasn't really going to be what I wanted it to be. Obviously it's Hamlet, so the guy's father has died, his mother has remarried, he hates his new stepfather, king sort of thing, whatever, and he's just not, it's just stroppy teenagerness and, you know, like falling in love for the first time. And it's fine, there was nothing wrong with it, but it was just dragging on too much and I couldn't quite get into it. It wasn't really holding my attention. The bits with like the two guys when they were sort of being cute together were really cute, so I really did like the dynamic between like the three teenage characters in there. They might be young adults, I'm not really sure, but I liked them as characters and I liked their dynamic. It just wasn't holding my attention because it was just too simple. There just wasn't enough to like hook me. I think because it was like a retelling and it's like a romance and I'm not that big into romance, so I thought I would really love this one. And again, it was enjoyable enough, but I was really having to try and force myself to read through it. I really needed a story that would just grip me and pull me in and keep me like engaged and entertained, and again, this just wasn't it. I think it's another one where there's absolutely nothing wrong with this and I would be able to read it on a normal day, but my brain was suffering at this point because I needed something good. And again, this just wasn't it. So I put this one down because I just couldn't bring myself to keep reading it. Every time I picked it up, I was just like, my brain would just be like, no, we need to do something else. It's ADHD time, we're not going to focus on this. Which I feel is like a big 2020 mood, but this is pre-lockdown, so I didn't really have any excuses at this point. The fourth book that I picked up, I don't think I read very much of it at all. It was The Sellsword's Compassion by Jacob Peppers. So this one, the reason for me DNFing this is completely specific to me. So I picked this up because I think the general plot was that there's this sort of like very mercenary man. He just cares about like money and getting the job done, and he's very like self-serving and maybe like quite cruel or mean, doesn't care about other people. Ends up in a situation where some sort of heist or job goes terribly wrong and he's going to end up having to escort, I think, a princess through, I guess, some dangerous territory or something, and get her to safety. And I think that's kind of like the task that he gets stuck with in this book. So I had initially thought that this was going to be a trope that I really like, which is when sort of like a bitter or mean or self-serving character has to like learn to work with other people, or finds themselves like when you get stuck with someone for so long they end up coming to care for that person, or realise that they will go out of their way to help someone else and value other people and not just serve only themselves. I like that dynamic, I like that sort of like slow sort of like change, like that development, but I like seeing that character development. And so I thought, great, this is going to be a book where the sort of like crux of the story, like not necessarily the plot, but like the character story is going to be a lot about that character's development, and I really like character arcs like that. I don't know whether I just didn't read the synopsis when I picked this up, but I came to read it and I realised that I don't think that's what this book is. The character, I think right at the start, is cursed by something that forces them to not be able to be self-serving. And I was like, oh, you're kidding. Because like the whole reason I bought this book was because I really like seeing that sort of like slow change from being like, you know, nasty, mean, don't touch me sort of person to being like, okay, actually we're kind of friends now. Like, I love that trope. It's one of my favourites. I love it so much. And just the fact that it was going to be like this magical MacGuffin sort of thing where it wasn't anything to do with the character or their changes at all. It was just going to be, here's a magic spell, so you now behave like you should. And I was like, okay, I'm not gonna read it then. But yeah, I don't even, I might have read the first page. But when that became apparent, I was like, I can't remember if it says it in the synopsis and I just didn't notice, or whether it does say it like on the first page. But basically the second I noticed, I was like, right, okay, well I can't be doing with that right now. So I didn't pick it up. I either read the first page and DNF'd it, or read the synopsis and DNF'd it. Which is like the quickest I've ever DNF'd a book, is just to read the synopsis and be like, no. And I'm so sorry, because it does, again, I'll probably give it another chance, because, I mean, I've already bought it, so like, I will give it a shot at some point. But yeah, I really thought that having a trope that I really enjoyed would be the thing to get me out of a slump. And sadly, the trope was entirely negated by a stupid magical Deus Ex Machina MacGuffin type plot story. I just, no. No. Okay, I really don't remember the order I was picking these up in now, but I think the next one I picked up was Blood Rain by Helix Parker. Again, I'll tell you why I picked this one up. It's kind of a double-edged sword here, because I knew that I probably wasn't going to enjoy this one the way that I enjoy like a traditional sort of standard novel, but something about this reminded me of like my angsty like pre-teen goth days, and also usually sometimes like bad fanfiction on the internet kind of vibes sometimes is very bingeable. And so I was thinking, okay, look, maybe it will just be so like over the top goth that it'll end up being like fun, and I like a whole like goth medieval gritty type setting, so I was thinking, you know, maybe this is for me. It was not. I don't remember much about this one. I think it was the most poorly written of the ones that I picked up. It is like 3 very, very, very short books mashed together, and I don't recall much of the plot. I think one of them, I think somebody was like a father coming back to a village and like their whole family had been like killed and slaughtered, and it was very like edgy and try hard and like, and I wasn't getting into it. I was thinking like, this is one where I'm not sure whether I'll pick it up again because it wasn't written the best. I don't know. I thought maybe try something else. It just didn't work out for me. This was not for me. Yeah, I didn't really like the characters, the characterization, the way it was written. I didn't really like anything about it. It wasn't like horrendous, it wasn't like, you know, motherfucking wizards bad, but I remember, I think I like cringed a bit, rolled my eyes a bit, really didn't enjoy anything I was reading. Once again, another DNF. By this point in the month, I was not doing the best. We'd already been on lockdown at this point. At this point, like, this is still the kind of lockdown where we thought it was just going to be, oh, it'll just be 2 weeks, you know, 2 weeks working from home and then you come back to the office. No. No, bitch. But at this point, my sort of routine was going out the window. I hadn't managed to read anything. I was working from home. It was so much easier to just like not, because I would read on the bus or read my book at lunch or on a break or something like that, but being at home the whole time, it was messing up my system, my schedule, my like ability to care about things. So at this point I was really losing the will to just read anything at all, but I thought, right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the book that I personally thought that I would enjoy the most, or that could be like the best for me. And so I finally picked up The Measurements of Decay by K.K. Eden, and you know, I think if I had maybe started with this we would be somewhere else right now. This book I got, I think, to the end of maybe the first chapter. I think the basic plot of this book is that there's different time periods and there's like a lot of crossover. It is a sci-fi, so I think that in the modern day there's like a professor or a scholar or something who is theorizing that a lot of humanity's problems are caused by like this lack of connection, or like the way that we interact, and meanwhile like I'm assuming it's going to like swap chapter by chapter, maybe, I'm not sure, but out in the future, I think humanity mainly, I read it, or I anticipated it to be kind of like a VR thing, so humanity is mainly like, they don't interact directly, I think they're mainly logged onto screens. I'm picturing like, I don't know, the boy mayor of Second Life but in like super HD. But I think there's another character who has like rejected that, who lives like on like the outskirts of like a star system or something. They've like rejected standard humanity, and they're off doing their own thing, like refusing to be part of like this virtual fakeness or whatever. And at the same time there's a girl who keeps popping up all throughout like history, or she's popping up between different timelines, and that's a mystery in itself, and I think that's kind of like the general setup for the book. I'm assuming it's going to be like a sci-fi type delve into like humanity, and I guess it's going to offer like that fictional viewpoint of relative real world issues, and I really like sci-fi that does that. I hate sci-fi that's just like, oh, it's fantasy but in space. I don't like that. I like sci-fi that has a point and a meaning and tries to discuss something through like this lens of sci-fi. So I kind of anticipated that it would be saying something about that. It would be forming some sort of like opinion, this sort of like question about like humanity and who we are and how we interact, and maybe like positing some sort of thing. You know, I don't read much sci-fi, but you know what I'm talking about, the way that a lot of sci-fi does. I will say from what I read of this, it was very well written. There's a lot of really strong characterization. The first chapter is like a guy talking to, I think, like his girlfriend, and it's clear that there's like a lot of things going wrong in their relationship. They're like borderline about to break up. And yeah, it's just really clear that this person is just filled with like a lot of hate, a lot of bitterness, and that's seeping out into their personal life and really affecting things at home. But you're clearly meant to feel a certain way about them. And I think the way that that initial sort of portrayal was done really, really well. The writing style was really good. I really liked it. The only reason I had to DNF this was because, aside from the fact that it was obviously very in-depth, like very engaging, like you obviously had to like, you can't just skim read this, you have to like pay attention and read through it and pick up on like all like these little, it was only the first chapter, but like there were a lot of little details in there to suggest things about like the characters and where they were, like how they got where they are. Again, I'd DNF'd what, like 5 other books at this point, and we were like a couple weeks into lockdown and the world was kind of going to hell and my mental health was not doing so great and I just couldn't physically read anything. I think if I had read this right at the start, I probably would have loved it and been fine, and I definitely do want to give this book another chance. Like, of all of these books, if I could only pick one book to take with me, it would be this one, because it's definitely like a chunky one. It's maybe like this thick. It does seem like it's going to be a really well written, very, I'm assuming, character driven, like thinker type, philosophical type sci-fi, and that to me seems like something I would really love to read. Sadly, I was just not in the right headspace to read it at the time, so I had to DNF it because I physically couldn't pick up a book and read it if I tried. Like, it was not a great time. But yeah, I did still want to say that from what I read of it so far, it seems really good. I can't say, maybe it's got a fantastic opening chapter and maybe the rest is bad, but who knows. I can only say that from what I read so far, it was really good and really engaging, and I do think about it sometimes and I would really like to pick it up again. I just know that my brain can't do it right now, and I'm trying to respect my stupid squishy smooth brain. So yeah, you will hopefully definitely see this on like a future TBR or a future wrap up at some point when I've actually read it. But again, the only reason I DNF'd this was not because of the book itself, it was because of me and my stupid mentally ill brain not being able to read a book. So yeah, so there it was. That was my wrap up. That was it 5 books, 6 books, and I read 0. I read 0 of them. Oh, which was not the best. I mean, I was reading a manga at this point, like before we left the office. While I was reading The Dark Sea Beyond, I was trying to like read a little bit of manga to like trick my brain into thinking, no, we can keep reading books, it's fine, just read a bit of manga and then read some book. And even that didn't work. So yeah, that does kind of explain a lot of my 8-month absence, because I really haven't read that much since either. Reading wise, my goals for the year is just like, I think I read, what have I read, like, I don't know, I have not read very many books at all this year, but whatever that number is, like, that's it, that's my goal. I don't care. If I can read one more book by the end of the year, I will be impressed. Because like that, seriously, my brain, whatever part of your brain reads, it's taken a permanent vacation. It has yeeted itself way out of my skull. Hopefully it returns at some point. That would be nice. Because I have a lot of books that I am really excited to read. There were so many books that I wanted to read like upon release, and I just haven't got into it yet. So I think after this I do have one more wrap up. I have like my kind of like lockdown wrap up, but yeah, this is basically, I felt like I set myself a TBR because I did like a haul slash TBR. I think it's the video just before this one, where I hauled all of these books and some others, and I was so excited in that video to get these books and read these books. Like, she did not know what was about to hit her. She had a big storm coming, and come it did. And now look at my brain. So I just kind of felt the need to, I guess, just put like a close on it, like just sum up like what happened with that video, what happened with the books that I'd set myself to read, and yeah, because for some of them at least I can offer like, I guess, a little bit of advice, like a little bit of an opinion, a little bit of like a review. For most of them I can't. But at least I've like closed off, I've like bookended that, I've closed off that chapter. It's like, okay, that's done. We're done with that now. This video explains what happened to that TBR, and my feelings about everything on that TBR. And I am quite disappointed because I did want to be very positive and very like, I don't know, I'd really hoped that I could get some really good books out of this haul, out of this TBR, to recommend that were very specifically self-published, because I want to support self-published authors, especially because it's NaNoWriMo now. So like, who knows, somebody in NaNoWriMo now will be publishing their NaNoWriMo novel at some point, maybe over the next year or two, and I want to support people like that, as someone who does like stuff like NaNoWriMo myself. So it's really unfortunate that, you know, this all happened when it did, and that I can't like actually come to you saying I've read this and it was fantastic, because I'm sure some of these books that I hold are fantastic. I just can't read them right now to tell you. So yeah, I am kind of sad that my plan to unearth some hidden gems did not work. I still think that Measurements of Decay has so much potential. It depends on the execution, but it's looking good. And there are obviously a lot of other books that I hold that I didn't try and read, because like I just didn't get to them, or I just didn't feel like trying to pick them up at this point. So there's still, you know, there's still room to go, there's still some potential, but it just sucks that I had hoped this wrap up would be like so positive and like so fun. And it's not. It's just me saying like, hey, here's 6 books I didn't read. Okay, and on that note, I'm gonna go. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I can't really say enjoyed, but I hope you found it like at least mildly informative about like, I guess, just what happened to these books and why it seems like I've abandoned them. RIP. Yeah, and with that said, I think that's it for this video. So I hope you guys are reading something that you actually enjoy and can actually get through, and I will maybe see you guys in the next video. Peace out, BookTube!